my dad wasn't around that much. And then we went back to Denmark when I was 12. We went to Denmark, and that I'd start wearing shoes, which was an experience that I wasn't used to.
A lot of us have to do that after lockdown, leaving the house wearing shoes.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh no, I have to wear shoes. That's not good. So good at wearing bare feet. And when I came to, and so I was in Denmark until I was about 16, and then my parents decided to come to the UK. So I came to the UK when I was 16. My English was very bad. So I had to learn that really quick. And my qualifications didn't really work because they were all Danish, because I was going to join the police force and do forensics. That's what I really wanted to do. I thought, I'm pretty good at solving problems. So that's what I wanted to do. And then I couldn't because of the language thing. And so my dad said, well, you're very good at, you're good at you draw a lot, all these cartoons. I used to copy Lucky Luke and Tintin and Asterix. And I used to make all these little doodles. And he said, well, you're very good at drawing. So anyway, I went down to Falmouth, showed them my little doodles, and they went, look, this isn't good enough. You're gonna have to go away and do some proper drawing. So I spent a year in the summer. I spent a year doing lots of drawings of everything that I could find around me. I was working down in Trewince, like I was like the handyman, because even at that age, I knew how to fix things. So I became like the handyman. Lived in the attic and had a bat pet, which is a hard thing to say if you're dyslexic. So I did that, and then I went back down there, and then they took pity on me, and so they said I could go on the course. So I went on the course, and then I got a distinction because I work hard. And then that meant I could go and do a degree because I had a distinction. My qualifications were rubbish. So I was at uni, and I didn't really, I didn't.
Is this uni in Falmouth?
No, no. Falmouth was more like it's before it was Falmouth as it is now. So the graphic design was down in Camborne, Redruth, where it always rains, and it was like a HND. You do like a beat. It's like a OND, HND, or whatever, and then you can move on to. Then I went to Hornsey School of Art, which then became Middlesex Polytechnic, and I just worked very hard. I didn't drink much. People like to go to the pub and things like that, but I was from Africa. I was like, why are you guys drinking all that shit? I definitely didn't take drugs. I didn't see the point of that, and I wore clogs because I didn't care what people think, So that was me at uni, and then I left uni, and I had lots of opportunities, and because I had worked hard, and I ended up working at Pentagram. That was my first job, and then at Saatchi's for a while, which I hated because I couldn't bear the thought of selling stuff I didn't believe in.
And if anyone doesn't know those names, Pentagram and Saatchi's are like the
big
dogs.
They're pretty good. Yeah, they're pretty good places. They're like they're good places to cut your teeth. I actually hated Pentagram because it's like a cathedral. You're not allowed to talk, so it's really silent, and everyone walks around like it's a church or something. It was just like I was thinking, this isn't for me. And so I ended up at Newman Sorrell, and then at a very early stage, I actually going back to the Pentagram thing. My faith was tested the first time when I was at Pentagram. So you got to imagine that I just left uni. My first job in this place that everybody wants to work at, and I actually got the job because I turned up for an interview, and I had an interview with Fletcher and Mervyn Kalansky, and they were like, really nice portfolio, but we actually don't have any jobs. And so I went and sat downstairs in the canteen, and I just stayed there all day. And I was there in the evening when Mervyn came down. He said, what are you doing here? Everyone had gone home. He said, I'm just going to sit here until you give me a job. So he gave me a job. And but it was interesting because they were very much into horoscopes at Pentagram. also the name Pentagram.
Yeah.
My mum wasn't happy. And so we were asked to do a calendar. I think it was Fletcher, Alan, because I worked with Alan on a couple of projects, and he wanted me to work with him on these horoscopes. And I said no. And the senior designer at the time, who was a lowlife, couldn't believe that I would say no to one of the partners. And it was like, why did you say no? I said, I just don't believe in horoscopes. And I said, you can do it if you want. I'm not going to judge you. You can do it if you want, but I'm just not going to promote that kind of stuff. I don't believe in it. And he said, so he started calling me a pedophile, which was a bit.
That's quite a leap.
Yeah, it was quite a big leap, which tells you a little bit about his emotional intelligence being quite low. And he would turn around to me and call me a pedophile. And I was like, I could flatten you if I wanted to. I'm quite a strong guy. Yeah, I used to box a lot. And I used to climb a lot of trees, so I'm pretty strong. I could flatten you, but I'm not going to do that. And actually, you're a sad, sorry state, and the way that you treat your juniors just because you've got issues down there below. And so that really upset me. I actually cried on the way home. I remember crying on the tube going back home, just feeling really sad about the whole thing. But I felt good about what I'd done. Because actually I'd stood up for something. And, I have always believed in God, even when I've rebelled a lot, but I've never thought of myself as a great Christian. It's like, I'm a really good dad. I'm a really rubbish husband. And I think that, I know that I'm not perfect, but I have these things in my life where I just go, these are my principles, and I'm just going to stick with them. Mm. And it has been quite painful at times because I've had to make some really big decisions. So I'll come on to some of those in a minute. But when I was very young, when I left uni. Sorry, no, it was when I was still down in Falmouth. I did this. I decided to join Greenpeace, and so I canoed for Greenpeace 2 days at sea. I'd never done it before. I just got a canoe. I bought a canoe and thought I can do this. And I was canoeing at sea with a road map, like the one that you use on the road. So I didn't really have any sea stuff on it apart from some blue stuff. So I was canoeing from Gunners Lake down to Charlestown in 2 days. And I got pushed out to sea, 3 miles out to sea, and I couldn't get back in. Because, by the time you get out there, 3 miles, it's like this. You see the land, and then you don't see the land, and then you see the land, and then you don't see the land. The waves are massive. They're like a building. And it's not like it is when you're closer to the shore. So I thought, well, this is it. I'm just going to have to settle here, and, I'll be in heaven soon, so it'll be fine,
I love that attitude.
Yeah, well, you have to think that, so I was canoeing, and eventually I managed to because the Coast Guards had warned me that if I went around Gunners Rames Head, they would arrest me. They'd send out the helicopters, and because they knew that I was doing it, because there was pollution up in Gunners Lake, and I was protesting against that. So I had to go around Rames Head, which is the most treacherous waters, which I found out when I went into it, and got pushed out to sea because of the currents. But eventually I managed to get back in, and then I got down to Charlestown and crawled out of my canoe, and I'd severed my back really badly. So I had 2 big operations on my back, and that was interesting because the NHS made me a drug addict. I always forget that. I always think it was me, but I'd never used drugs before. But they pumped so many drugs into me, and
because of the back,
with the pain,
injury.
yeah, the it's pretty bad. And so to cut a long story short, so I then went to work for Newell & Sorrell. And within a very short space of time, I became a board director, which pissed off quite a lot of the more senior designers there who were older than me. Because I was just more busy than them. They'd become a little bit lazy, I think. So so I remember talking to John, and he said, why don't you open an office in Amsterdam? Then you can do all the international work out there, and then there won't be problems with these people here. So that's what I did. I went to Amsterdam, opened an office there with Tony Allen, who's like the suit. And then we ran all the international stuff out there. And I ran out of my meds, these painkillers that I was taking, which were codeines, tramadol, opiates. Got opiates in the tramadol, really yummy ones, very, very yummy. And I ran out. And a friend of mine, we were out drinking. I'd started drinking then, partly because I was thirsty. I realized that the reason why I drank so many of those white beers was because it was just hot and I was thirsty, and everybody else was drinking alcohol. And I was like, okay, I'll just drink all of these. And I got quite a high tolerance to alcohol because we're Vikings, so it's genetically, I can drink all night and I'm still completely compos mentis. Everybody else is falling under the tables. So I was just drinking all this stuff, and then a colleague, introduced me to this little bottle with a little spoon, and it took the pain away. So I didn't have these meds, but this thing was really great. It was called Coke. And so I thought, oh, that's really great. So I started using that quite a lot, and that sort of graduated. It sort of like went to crack, because crack is a lot better. It's just more instant. It's more powerful. It's really good. And so I became quite addicted to that, and I drank a lot. I still was able to function, still was able to work. I was earning a lot of money and traveling around the world, and I got really good at picking up drugs like easy. I could easily get drugs in any city. People in NA, we always talk about these young people, the newcomers who come in who are like wide-eyed. They say, yeah, I moved city because I just had to get away. I'm like, in 5 minutes I could find drugs just outside this door here. In fact, if you go to a prison, you'll have even more drugs. So there's no getting away from it. You just have to stop.
And you were working all over during this time?
Yes. So I was working all over this time. And I was in New York and Amsterdam and London. And then if there was any other work like banks or stuff, we were working for, I'd be in Colombia and other places. So that was really tough on the soul.
Yeah. And
it got me to a place where I just knew that I'd lost who I was. I didn't really know who I was anymore. And actually, that's partly to do with being in hotels a lot, because you don't have any grounding. You just end up in all these fresh sheets everywhere that dry your skin out, and you become this prune, going from one place to another. And I just didn't have that grounding. And of course, my first marriage broke up. Even though I got a good relationship with my children, a lot, and I've always devoted a lot of time to my children, but things were pretty bad. So I decided to leave corporate life, and it's partly because of the corruption as well within those big corporations. I mean, they are corrupt. There's no doubt about it. And I knew about a lot of that corruption as well, the way that they treated clients and tricked clients into paying more, and delaying stuff deliberately, and all the sort of tricks that you would do if you worked in the city. But I didn't think that happened in our industry, but it is pretty corrupt. So I decided to leave and set up something different. And it was interesting. I set up ASHA and Co. And I moved out of London, or at least I thought I moved out of London. I just went to Maidenhead, like around, it's still within the M25.
And you've got some work to show us from ASHA, is that?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Yeah, sorry, I hope and by the way, if I'm boring anyone, just tell me. You gotta tell me.
I just know people love pictures.
Let's have a look. Is that shared?
Sorry, I shouldn't have sprung that on you.
Is that shared? Can you see?
No.
Right, let's try again. Where are you? Hang on a minute. Sorry about this. Oh, there you are. Okay, hang on. So,
So this is some of your work from ASHA.
yeah, so this is ASHA & Co. So that's the team that we have.
I can spot you in the middle there.
Yeah, that's me. I like to wear hats because I don't have hair. So, and these are projects these are companies that we've worked for, and identities that we've created. And some of you know Jude's because that's an ice cream. That's a UK ice cream that we built from scratch with the Jude's team. The first project that I did actually when I left was to rebrand God. And I know it sounds a bit blasphemous to say that, but I kind of wanted to do something that was really against the grain. And you've got to remember, this might look normal now, but 15, 18 years ago when I did this, it was quite controversial. Well, it was controversial within the church, but it was also, it was actually within the secular world as well. It was a bit of a surprise. So, so it got quite a lot of attention internationally as well. And because basically what I've done is I've taken blasphemy, and I was taking blasphemy and I was claiming it back into God's kingdom. So, you know, God knows who I am, and God bless you, just reach out. But then very importantly, God bless you is the registered trademark of God's kingdom since BC. And, you know, we did all these different products and things. And so it was an exercise in doing the best that you can do around tone of voice and copywriting matched with ideas that are relevant. So I've always had this thing about creating identities that if you create products, those products need to build the brand. They shouldn't just be products, because it's really easy. You know, there's so many briefs out there where people go, we're doing this thing, we're creating this brand, we need some mouse mats and some plastic pens. And it's just completely random. So why can't every single thing that you create help to build your brand? And actually in this particular case, these products were almost like a modern day track. So in the old days, when I was a kid in the 70s, we had these tracks, Jesus tracks that you'd give to people. I saw these products as tracks.
Yeah, and people wouldn't realize maybe from those pictures that that's a tiny Cornish church and quite a small place. And that really stands out as something different there.
It was big. It ended up being quite big. Richard and Judy, it was on Richard and Judy. All the big news channels like ITV News and Channel 4 came down to the church and descended on this tiny little church and interviewing these old ladies and the vicar and stuff. And then we built this website and they were sending all this stuff out all over the world. People were ordering umbrellas and, you know, umbrellas that said, you know, heavens above, he'll reign forever, blah, blah, blah. And it just became overwhelming. So I got a call, I think it was about a year into the whole project, I got a call from the vicar saying, please just take the website down.
Too popular.
No, it was too much. It was just too much for them. What do you want me to talk about? We can talk about social projects. We can talk about recovery.
Yeah.
Family.
Let's just set this up for everyone else that we've got till 9:30. So I'm gonna fire some questions at Marksteen. I've been dying to ask, but all the time keep putting questions in the chat of things you'd like to ask Marksteen. He does literally everything. So if you're a photographer, ask him photography questions. I'll probably go for more of a graphic designy angle, but stick those questions in the chat. Johnny will pick out his favorites and send them to me and we'll put them to Marksteen. And yeah, don't worry about asking a question in case I'm going to ask it, because put it in the chat there and we'll all see and get to it.
And Sarah, if I can rely on you with the chat thing, because I can't.
That's fine.
Trying to do both.
But first, I'll ask my questions because I have the mic.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So you've done a lot of Christian art projects. You've got the Stations of the Cross, which you had flashing up. I really want to ask about some of these thumbnails, but I'm not going to. And I wanted to know what you think good Christian art is or does. You know, start with a nice, easy question.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find Figma, but I think it's gone. Never mind.
Figma's down.
Yeah, Figma's down. Sorry, ask me the question again.
Yeah, so what do you think good Christian art is or does?
So I don't think that there's such a thing as Christian art. I just don't think there is. And I think actually just even using that word already, it's bad.
Mm-hmm. We're thinking of doves and watercolors.
Yeah.
No offense if that's what anyone does. But.
Yeah, but well, actually the super color palette for that is the yellows and oranges and reds, and then the Golgotha and the sunset and the cross and all those things. And I think that there is a real strong cheesy theme that goes through quite a lot of Christian literature and the way that Christian websites look like. But to be fair, you know, so does all the conspiracy websites as well. They have that same vibe to them. If you think about it, so we're not alone.
It's like a strange Venn diagram in the middle, Christians and conspiracists.
Yeah, and like David Icke and all that stuff. So yeah. So I think with Christian, I think the important thing is for all of us, Christians and non-Christians, to think of ourselves as problem solvers. I think that has always been the key for me, is for us not to think about ourselves as, you know, in individual bits or specialisms, is to think of ourselves as problem solvers. And then all the things that we've learned, they're just tools that we use to solve those problems. And I find that within, I mean, look, if you look at the Christian world, I've always had a thing about music. The Christian music is terrible, I think. It's always 10 years behind. And, you know, it used to sound like U2, and then it sounded like Coldplay. And now everything
sounds like Mumford and Sons.
Now it sounds like Mumford and Sons. And I think we've lost the art of worship, because I think that worship is something that you do collaboratively, and it's not collaborative. You know, it's like somebody on a stage singing at you. Because it makes money, we write songs, new songs all the time, so people don't know the words, because, you know, you go to Spring Harvest, there's a whole deck of new songs that you have to learn, and you haven't learned them until you get back home. And it's like, whereas if you do Taizé worship, where everyone is harmonizing together and they're repeating the same thing over and over again, why is that important? Why is it important to repeat the same thing over and over again? Because when you do that, eventually you let go and you enter into something much, much bigger, because you're no longer now just focusing on that bit. But if you have to constantly read words and focus, I just think we've got it wrong. So I think there's a lot of things wrong in that bit. And don't get me started on other bits about the church, because I've got real issues with, I think church is broken in the way that we do church. I've had a lot of experience in NA, and what I've realized in Narcotics Anonymous is that the structure of the 12 steps and how the structure of those meetings are run is incredible for honesty, because everyone is vulnerable and therefore everybody is honest. And you don't get that in church, because people like to have a mask, and they like to sit behind things, and they like to pretend that everything is okay, especially if they're in a leadership role. And even if they say things like, you know, I'm a sinner too, but it's not about that. It's about how honest and authentic are you really? And are you willing to also step down from your chair that you're standing on and be part of everything that's happening here, rather than this separation? So I think there's a lot of things like that are broken. And the biggest part of that is gossip. So if everyone isn't together in it, if you're not all together, and you're not all vulnerable together, then gossip happens. And so therefore people don't share. So therefore people don't really talk about really important things. So I think that's broken as well. So going back to design. Go on, Sarah.
Well, I was going to say, you've done some, I don't want to call it Christian art, no, you've said it, but some art that's, you know, powerful stuff, like you did the Stations of the Cross with Muslim refugees, or we've got a question coming in about the portraits you did of Alan in the Behold the Man.
Yeah.
What do you think about that works, and why does that connect with people outside the church?
so here's the thing about these projects that I think is really important. So so something like Behold the Man, I'm just looking at, oh, sorry, I need to share so that you can see what I'm looking at.
You got a photo of that?
Yeah, so so that's Behold the
go.
Man. So the Behold the Man project was, I wanted to, I was exploring lots of things at the same time. I was exploring the way that we deal with homelessness and addiction, and how we, how do you, what's our response, and what should our response be? Should I give money to somebody in the street? Should I try and buy them a sandwich? Should I, what are the things that I need to do? And I learned a lot from this project, but I also learned a lot about myself. And I wanted to challenge audiences as well, because actually the real discovery with Alan, who's a homeless guy who's been on heroin for, I don't know, most of his life really. What I needed to do was to take away all his surroundings and everything that was around him, his context. I needed to separate all that away and then get in close to him as a man, to find the man that was the man before he had his first kiss, before he took his first drug, before he was abused by his parents. I needed to find that image. And eventually I did find that image. And I was surprised when I found that image that it felt very Christ-like. And that taught me a lot, because I'm looking at a man who everyone has given up on. Everyone has given up on him. He was a nuisance in town, and there he is, Christ-like.
And did you go into taking that portrait trying to make him look Christ-like, or is that something that just came out of your spending time with him?
Yeah, it just came out spending time with him, and I ended up doing a whole documentary. The other thing to say as well with this is that, and I mean, some of you might be interested in this, but all of these projects I do on the side, these are not, these cost me money. I end up having to spend money on these. But I do them because I know that I'd never be commissioned to do something like this. It's like, what I've realized in life is that some of the best things, some of the good things that you do will always not pay. It's like, if you have a really good idea for something really great that you should do, quite often it's you're going to have to fund it yourself. But I needed to do it because I wanted to take this experience to audiences that aren't connecting with it. And it was really interesting when I did it, because when I did the exhibition, I gave people, let's see if I gave people a choice to give. So they could either vote for sustentation or intervention or prevention. And when people were given that choice, they'd buy a book for £15 and they'd get 15 gold coins. They could choose which bit to put it in, like you do when you go to Waitrose. And overwhelmingly, people went for prevention. And it's interesting because the UK as a country, we're not very good at funding prevention. So if you go to Scandinavia, we are much better at doing prevention and paying money for things that haven't happened yet, but we know that's going to happen. But if you look at the UK, it's always firefighting. So we'll give money to sweep people off the street, but we won't actually really fund projects that stop people getting into that situation in the first place. So I was quite interested in the fact that when people were given these three choices, actually prevention was key. And that really excited me. Yeah.
And we'll get to the questions later, but there is one coming in about this project and how doing this project affected you and how Alan's doing.
Okay, so Alan and I are really good friends. I saw him today. And when the project was done, when I printed the book and the exhibition was happening, I went down to where he sits down in Cheltenham in the street begging. And I went down and I gave him the first copy of the book and I sat with him. and he was crying. Yeah, it's quite emotional. He said that the book, he said that because I'd given him a pre-copy of the book, which he'd given to his parole officer, because his parole officer had asked him about him, about his life and all of that. And he gave the parole officer the book, and he said to me, the book is me, it's everything about me that nobody's ever done. So it was so that was quite transformational. But the biggest transformation was the fact that he ended up agreeing to go into the YMCA, come off the street. So he went into the YMCA, and for the first time he had a bed. Well, actually, when he first went in, they took the bed away so that he could sleep on the floor, because he wasn't used to sleeping in a bed. And then within about a year or 2 years, he was then sleeping in the bed. And now he is in sheltered accommodation. He's in sheltered accommodation. He came off heroin and went on to methadone. Interestingly, while we were going through this process, I was getting more involved in heroin at the time. And I overdosed twice on heroin in that time. And so it was interesting because, he's the bum in the street. I'm the guy who's, global creative director, blah, blah, blah. But we were exactly the same. We were both struggling with one of the hardest drugs to come off. It is literally by far the hardest drug to come off because it's so good. So anybody who says to their children that these drugs are really not very nice, that's rubbish. The whole point is that they're very, very nice, which is why they're very difficult to come off. So I was able to see Alan for who he was and understand him a lot better as well, because we were both going through similar things. But we were also emerging out of it, which was really interesting. Sorry, I don't know if that answers the question. I'm kind of waffling.
No, I think that's great. So this is one of your creative side projects, but you've also got your commercial design agency running at the same time.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's important to have both of those things going?
I think that I think it's really good to be in the world. I think I think that's good. I don't think that everyone has to do the same thing, but I think it's good to have a foot in the world. You don't have to be of it. And it also pays the bills. So we work with commercial companies. There's a really good, if you want to see change in the world, you have to actually get in there. You can't separate yourself away and do really nice social projects and expect everything to change completely. I think you have to be in the bad bits in order to affect change. And so when we work with a bank, I mean, it is shocking. I do a lot of telling off and calling out, even Christian companies. Actually, I've worked with a Christian company recently who do giving. They do what's it called? They manage people's portfolios, like wealth portfolios, and I had to call them out because they spend all their day giving money away that people have given them to give away, and I suddenly realized that they don't give anything themselves. It's like I asked how much profit they made, and they went rah, rah, rah. And I said, where's the 10? What's 10% of that? They went $250,000. I said, what do you do with that? They went, what do you mean? I said, well, that's your tithing. Aren't you going to give that away somewhere? That's a Christian company. They're usually the worst, actually. But then you work with banks, for instance, and you have an opportunity to work with a bank and do the project that you're supposed to be doing, and then persuade that they do something over here, a social project that links back into their brand objectives. So whatever their corporate strategy objectives are, you can find. So I'll give you a really good example. Let me give you an example. We worked with Nationwide. And every big bank does, these big companies, they have something called CSR, which is dead. It's this a really stupid token gesture thing that happened in the sort of early noughties. So CSR, so their CSR would be something like, we're a bank, so therefore we're going to encourage and support numeracy in schools. And I was like, why? What? Because you're a bank, numeracy is what you're going to do as your social thing? So we went away and thought about it. And actually, because we'd been working with Nationwide, and the positioning, the strategy and the positioning that we'd created for them was around fairness. So unlike a bank, because you're a building society, you're all about fairness because it's a membership organization. Now, if your positioning is fairness, what does your social project or your social activity look like? So the answer is you should be providing breakfast for all the kids that come into school who don't have breakfast in the morning, to give them a level playing field and a chance, give everybody the same chance at school of succeeding, and forget about that stupid numeracy thing that you're doing. That's just academic. It's just weird. So you take, so you can go into a big organization like that and then affect change by creating something social that bolts into it. Is
that something you were able to convince them to do or not?
Yeah. They've done it. Yeah. And we do that all the time. So I'm constantly at them, like constantly. They can't get away. They get bored with me after a while. And sometimes they cry, and that's fine. So I think that's really important. And I also think that you also need to do, I think it's good to do independent social projects that you create yourself and see them as 3-year projects. All my projects that I do, I never think I need to do this in 6 weeks. I do bits, then I leave it. I do bits, I leave it. I do bits, I leave it. And every time I come back to it, I adjust things. I adjust. If it takes me 3 years, it's fine. But if you do 6 of those at the same time, you'll have one to launch every year. So I think it's important to do those things on the side because you're in control of it. You're the one who created the brief. And also you need to be open to your own brief changing. So my initial brief with Alan was to go out and photograph homeless people. And it just turned into something much, much deeper because I let go of all of that. I let go of the fact that I needed to do some kind of street photography and it was more about learning about him. And then suddenly I understood his vulnerability and I understood my own kind of like sort of wrong agendas. They got really highlighted, and I was like, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that because it's not fair on him. And I want to do this instead. And actually, this is the bit that I want to bring to light. And so the brief evolved. And then you end up with this project at the end and everyone goes, oh, that's really amazing. What they don't realize is that the brief probably changed about 600 times. So that was one of those, and that happens a lot. You go along with it, and you should always be willing to change your mind based on new information that you gain. So I change my mind all the time. And my kids, they will correct me on stuff sometimes, and I'll go, you know what, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Based on what you've just told me, I actually agree with you.
And you talk about how like these creative projects are kind of changing you, but does that then feed back into the agency and the work you're doing there, or is it more for you and your personal creativity?
No, I think so at ASHA, it's not a secret that I'm the front man, and so because of that all that work that I do socially is embraced by the team. They like it because they have the opportunity to do it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we start the year or whatever, and I go, right guys, okay, it's going to be a new year, right? So you're all going to do a social project, yeah? Are you going to grab something that you really want? And sometimes some of them will grab something and they will go and do something, but some of them don't do it. And it's not because there's nothing wrong with that. Some people like doing things in a certain way and other people like doing things in another way. And so it just has ended up that I'm the one who seems to do it. But what happens is I will come in with an idea. So we'll have, I'll have an idea. I'll usually go to Wales and spend some time on my own. And I'll come back and I'm going, blah, 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 blah. And I've got this, I want to do this and I want to do this. And everyone's looking at it going, don't really get it. And it doesn't sound very coherent. And I know it's not coherent because it's like the beginning. But then once it starts to take a little bit more shape, then people get excited and then everyone has different parts in it. So, somebody might design the book and we work on that together, and somebody else might help with the documentary or or come out with me and do some photography or whatever. So when I did the stations project, I took people from work with me to, and I took my own kids as well, to the jungle. So we went to the jungle a lot in Calais and spent time in there, and took products out as well, useful things for them to have, like you know, stuff. And so people can get, and actually they can get involved as much as they want or as little as they want. But I can't force, you know, as an employee, you can't force people to do stuff like that that's outside of their work.
There's so many other questions I want to ask you, but I think it's time for our break now, just in case anyone really needs a trip to the loo or a drink or anything, or to get their questions in. So we're going to have a break for 5 and then come back, and I'll put your questions to Marksteen. He said nothing is off limits, so that's your challenge.
Yeah, nothing is off limits.
So yeah, 5 minutes and then we'll be back for more questions. So welcome back. I hope you've got your coffees, had a good break. Could you turn your screens on when you're back, just so I know that you're back? If Johnny's out there, I think he's going to jump in with some notices at this point.
Jumping in.
Jumping in.
Give me thumbs if you can see me or hear me even. Nice, good work. Guys, great to see everybody. Marksteen, absolute pleasure. I was saying to Marksteen before, and we've chatted on the phone, but never seen him in the flesh, and particularly not in his work office. So
yeah.
I'm just going to fill us in on some just some Sputnik news. This event's put on by Sputnik Faith and Arts, and many of you looking around the screen, many of you know us, and we know you. Haha. We know you. That sounds a bit ominous, doesn't it? I'm just going to share something on here. We've got a couple of things that just just get this. There we go. And no, I will leave that. I'm on a computer I don't understand. So we may get a picture in a sec. But we're a network of Christian artists, and we do a number of different things. We want to work with churches and artists to rebuild some of the bridges that have been broken down, unfortunately, between churches and artists. I think Marksteen touched a little bit on that earlier. But how we do that is by connecting, profiling and funding artists. And the connecting and funding side of things is particularly relevant. Just really quickly, it's brilliant to see, particularly recently over lockdown, some just great connections through going online with its drawbacks. Also allows us to connect much better in some ways. And so while traditionally we would work in geographical kind of artist meetups, which work great and are still operating, we now would have several more kind of discipline meetups as well. And we organise them through our Slack, our Sputnik Slack, which I'll put the link up in the chat in a moment. But essentially, through that, it's a good way to chat, good way to meet others, good way to share work, etc. But also a platform to organise meetups. We've got illustrators meetup, painters meetup, poets meetup, filmmakers meetup. It's organically just growing with the people that go on. So if you're interested in hooking up with other Christians, conspirators, comrades and collaborators, please hook on that when you see the link. That'd be great. The other thing we do is we run a grants system for Christian artists. We want to see Christians thriving in their work as well as in their faith. And so we've just given out a number of grants for the last term, but I've got another load we're going to be checking out in about June. We'll make the next judgments on those. They tend to be between about £200 and £500, so not huge grants, but enough to get projects over the line, self-initiated projects or community projects as well. Again, I'll put some details in the chat in a short while, but would love it if anyone's interested in that. You've got a project that could do with just a bit of a push. We'd love to help out the best we can. We also have some other members of the team who can share their skills sometimes as well. So guys, I'm not gonna say any more because I'm not half as interesting as our spotlight man this evening. So I'm gonna hand back to Sarah and Marksteen. But yeah, brilliant to see you all this evening. Give me a wave just to check you're there. I know these things are so good. You got your tea, you're ready to go. Sarah and Marksteen, back over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you for all sending in your questions. Do keep them coming. It's not too late. So I think the first question I'm going to ask is, someone says they feel a bit uncomfortable about church branding. You know, they're in a tiny church. Actually, does the person whose question this is want to put this to Marksteen? I haven't got a name, but it's quite specific.
Yeah.
Person who's asking a question about church branding.
So I do a church background.
Hi, yeah, it was basically, I'm at a very, very small church. I'm a designer, and obviously you get the kind of question of like, oh, well, we should probably rebrand and get a logo and stuff. And I just feel like, I don't know how necessary it is, but as a general thing as well, like for small local churches, I kind of struggle to see how like professional design, what it has to offer. I wondered if you have any thoughts on that.
I do. I got loads of thoughts on it, and it's a really good question. But let me put this to you, because I think that it's more about order. I think that what design is design is academic in a way that it kind of, what it helps do is make you look like you know what you're doing. So, you know, if Bibles were treated in the same way, i.e., why do we need to design them really well? There would just be a mess, and you wouldn't be able to find your way through it. You know, the amount of time that people spend designing the typography for a Bible is insane. I mean, the good ones. I don't mean like the message and all of that. They're really badly designed. But so I think design. I think the word branding is a bad word anyway. I don't think that branding is very helpful. I think that if you think about positioning, so a lot of churches will put banners outside their church which say things like "Smile, Jesus loves you." You know, it's like really weird stuff that doesn't make any sense. And if you're not a Christian and you walk past, you just think they're a bunch of loonies. And we can't accept that. We can't go, yeah, we're a bunch of loonies because we're Christians and, you know, Jesus loves you. I think we have to find ways to communicate better with people. So for me, the word brand means also the language that we're using, the positioning, how we position ourselves as a church in the community, and whether we look tidy or not tidy. So why should churches look like an unmade bed? Because I make my bed every morning when I get up. I make my bed because it makes me feel better. And my bedroom is ordered. It feels ordered. So when I go back to bed, it's nice and ordered. I think churches should be more ordered. And if you want to see mess, you just need to go to Spring Harvest. You know, it's just a sea of mess everywhere. You know, like everyone's brand, you know, it's just all messy. And so I think design is a really good tool for bringing order and making people know that you take the things that you do very seriously, and helping to communicate that. So that, I think that probably answers the question around, is it necessary? But to just add to that, I'm not suggesting now that all churches should do a St. Keir, because we've already done it. It's done. We need another idea. You know, St. Keir worked 18 years ago because it shocked people. And the brief from the vicar was, I don't want more bums on seats. You know, we're fine. We don't need that. I just want to connect with the community. And I said, well, okay, be careful what you wish for, because I can help you connect with the community. And he did connect with the global community. So that was his brief. But I don't know if that answers the question.
That's great. Is that great, Hannah?
Yeah, that's really, really helpful. Really good to, yeah.
See, Hannah, what I would do, if you're in a church, yeah, and I've been in a few, and there's one here locally, the Baptist church. I mean, crikey, when I turned up, it was such a mess. Every bit of communication that was created was different, and it just felt so messy. You know, everything felt so messy, and I just thought, you know, do we have to communicate that we are messy because we're Christians and we don't care? But I just don't think that churches should feel like a hippie commune. I just don't think that we need to be like that. I think we can be really clear. And I think the best way to start with a design project or a branding project is to create order. That's the best, do an audit of all the shit and everything that people are producing and all the blue tack stuff that people are doing. Bring it all together and go, how can we clean all this up? Forget about logos. This isn't about logos. We're not even going to do a logo. We're just going to clean all of this up. How do we do that? That's a really good starting point. And then if you need a logo, stick one on there.
So I'm getting a challenge coming through in the questions. Someone's saying, but what if your church is messy? What, where is that line between being ordered but being authentic to the people that you have?
What do you mean by mess? What do you mean by messy?
I think not slick. But
I think it's a very big leap from messy to slick. There's a huge leap. It's like messy is really bad.
Yeah.
And slick is also a little bit disingenuous. So there's huge amounts in between there, which is just about order. I mean, do we really want to have a church where you turn up and the handle falls off when you try and get in, and then you go to the toilet and somebody didn't flush it properly, and there's crap everywhere, and there's no toilet paper? But there's a magazine that you can use, because we're a church, we don't want to be too slick. Really? Just clean the toilet. Clean it, make it really nice, and put a heater in there so that you're not freezing your ass off when you're in there.
So
the amount of churches I've been to, where you go to the toilet, it's freezing. It's like, but we're a church, we have to be careful with the money. No, just raise some more money. Seriously, come on. Let's not be like that. Let's not be pathetic and crumbly and falling apart. Let's not do that. Let's be better. We can be better.
I really wish I could record this and play it to so many churches I know.
I think somebody is recording it.
Who's recording it? Just take that clip. Is that every time I'm having a rant about fonts, they can have that clip.
Yeah.
Can
I just ask?
It's me. It's me.
Oh, it is you. Okay.
Clean the toilet is our new tagline.
Clean the toilet. No, I'm glad it's you. I thought it might be somebody from the outside.
No.
Go on. I think I'm really passionate about this. So I'll give you an example. I was a member of the Baptist church here. Blue tack culture drives me insane. Everything is shitty. Every communication is shitty. The banners that are put up outside the church say shitty things that nobody understands. Things like be unto the world. It was some quote from the Bible. I'm like, dude, the gang kids that I'm working with down the road, they have no idea what you're talking about. It's just mumbo jumbo for the middle class community, stuck up middle class community. It doesn't make any sense to anyone. Can we please change all of that? And so that was the first thing. And then the second thing was they had this coffee shop next door to the church called The Vine. Not surprisingly, not imaginative at all. And so it's called The Vine, and it's become a soup kitchen for 6 old people in the community. Nobody else was using it. And it was losing $2,000 a year. And so I went in and I said, look, I will take that coffee shop and I'll refurbish it. I just need 30 grand. Yeah, not me, but to pay the builders to come in, gut the place, refurbish it. I'm going to turn it into a really sexy coffee shop. We're going to charge a lot of money for coffee for all the yummy mummies who are dropping their kids off at school. And then we're going to provide very cheap soup and bread for old people. They can almost have it for free. So we'll raise money from the people who can afford it, but that means putting in a proper coffee machine and all this. So I did all of that. And the leadership said, no, we don't want to do that, because we're a church and we think that it should be a charity shop, and so we should put like charity cards in there and and we can have like a jumble sale. And I said, we're missing an opportunity anyway. So I walked away from that presentation feeling pretty rubbish. And then one of the old ladies, anonymous old lady, I got a phone call from the vicar saying, there's a check here with your name on it for Marksteen's project. And it was 30 grand from an old lady we wanted to remain anonymous. And so I was able to go and create King's Coffee House, which I did. And today it's still there, making money. And it's also serving the community. And the people who are in it are also, there are young people working in there with disabilities and, learning difficulties and all that kind of stuff. So that's what it used to look like. And that's what it looks like now. And I don't think this is loading properly. But the King's Coffee House is a success story in our community. And you can see it on our website. I can't seem to get my website to work properly because it's there you go. I don't know if that helps.
That's great. I mean, this is a subject we could do a whole evening talking about how churches brand themselves, but I'm going to move you on just so we can get through as many of these questions as possible. There's a question from Matt asking about how you would progress from creative production to creative direction. That's something he's looking to do, and how you'd help him do that.
So if you want to be a creative director, you need to start directing. So, I remember at Interbrand, I used to be in charge of all the creative directors there. All the senior director type designers who weren't creative directors, because I was the creative director. And they all wanted to be creative directors for some reason, even though some of them aren't actually creative directors, because you have design directors. So in my business, I have a deputy creative director, which is Scott, and I've got a design director, which is Simon. They're very different characters, and they're good at different things. The thing about being a creative director is that it's not about what you do, it's about what you're not going to do and what you're willing to give up. Yeah. So if you want to be a creative director, you need to put your computer away and you need to start directing and empowering other people to produce what you would have produced in the past yourself, sitting there with your mouse. But you cannot be a creative director sitting there doing the designs as well and trying to get other people to do their stuff and trying to direct them when you're also in competition with them doing exactly the same thing. So you need to stop doing that bit so that you can start directing. That's it. You just need to start being a creative director. There's no such thing as how do I train to be a creative. And by the way, you're either a creative director or you're not. And that's to do with leadership. So leadership is about leading from behind. It's not about being a creative dictator. If you turn into a creative dictator, people don't follow you, and people will find ways to make your life awkward. And so you need to be a creative director, meaning that you are making other people really successful in what they're creating. So when they're trying to do something, you are there because you have all the knowledge, because you spent many years at the printer knowing how things get printed and how color works on, you spent years doing all of that. You spent years doing this bit, you spent years doing that bit. So you know all those things, so you can really help, and you're helping somebody else to grow and to become the best that they can be. And you employ people who are better than you at lots of things, like, somebody who's really good at, I can't do Photoshop. Crikey, I can't remember the last time I did something in, I don't even know how to use Illustrator. I just don't anymore. But I can't do all of those things and also do the things that I do. I just can't do it. And being a creative director is also very lonely, because you sort of end up, you end up being the one who's there for other people, to support, to guide, to build, to strengthen, to give comfort to do HR with, to cry with, all of those things. Is that helpful?
Is that everything, Matt, or is there anything you wanted to come back on?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I guess just if there's time, just another element to that question would be, do you think in the industry today there's room for freelance creative directors, or is it a role that is still kind of expected by clients and brands to be embedded into an agency?
I don't think there's a yes and a no for that one. I think it depends entirely on the situation. I mean, you know, the problem with freelance, that role as freelance is that you have to be either known or really, really good at what you do. I'll give you an example. When I left Interbrand, I didn't really want to start a business because my wife didn't want me to, because it's like, you know, that's just too much hard work. And I used to freelance as a creative director, charging 10 grand a day. And so my wife was like, why are you even going to start a business? You can just do that 3 days a week. And you know, that's, you don't need to do that. But I wanted a business because I wanted to be with other people. You can charge 10 grand a day as a creative director freelance because people know who you are, and the team that you're walking in to direct will do what you say. Yeah, they will. So, but creative direction is about relationship. So if you haven't built relationships with people, you can't direct them because they don't want to follow you. Because then you're dictating to them. But then that's not really a creative director, that's a creative dictator. And that's a rubbish way to work. And you get rubbish work from that as well, because people just do what they need to do and then go home. So you need to build relationships. And so the idea of being a freelance creative director, I don't think is a thing. I think that it would be very hard to do that because you need to direct people. But it's also okay just to be a designer, to be a freelance designer who does strategy and thinks conceptually and innovates. And you know, I remember Michael Wolff when I used to I traveled with him once, and he's like a mentor to me, I guess. He's just an old guy. He's been around for a long time, and in his passport it just says designer, which I think is quite cool. Let's keep it simple. I ended up with such long titles over the years, they just got longer and longer. I think at one point I was global strategy creative director, because I do quite a lot of different things. I mean, what I've realized is that what I actually do is positioning. That's what I do. That is my main thing. I've learned instinctively to work out where an organization needs to be. They're here, they should be over here. So what does that positioning look like, and how do we achieve that? What are the tools that we're going to use to get to that? So positioning is quite, that's the bit that I like doing. That's the bit that I'm good at doing. And then everyone else in the business has different skills.
Shall we move on to the next question? Because I was reminded through the questions that you haven't talked about your recovery, and you said you'd come back to that. So would you be able to talk about that? Maybe talk about your cold turkey project as well and some of the work you've done around that?
Yeah. So basically, I think I ended on the bit where I was addicted to heroin, which is a big one. As in the drug world, that's probably the worst one. Having said that, I've got a whole presentation called Build Sound Minds, which is about addiction. And we're all addicts, all of you are. You just have to think about your phone and the fact that how you feel when your phone is taken away from you or you lose it. That'll give you an idea of your addiction. So, because that causes huge amounts of anxiety. I think that anyway. So I got addicted to these physical drugs, and so I then I left Interbrand and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to start my own business. I don't care about all that money stuff, and I just want a better life and I want to find my soul. And it took me 10 years, 8 years maybe. I went through. Right, that's the last time. I'm not going to do that again. 24 hours later, something happens. I don't know how to deal with my feelings. I just want to block it. Again, over and over again, just keep repeating it. And then eventually I joined NA, which is Narcotics Anonymous, which was great. And it's a really great community. So if any of you are struggling with alcohol or drugs or anything like that, I can highly recommend joining NA, because you will not be able to do it on your own. And that's the thing about drugs, is that it's very, very difficult to give that up on your own. You need accountability. And so I joined one of these groups, and I got really pissed off because I spent years going to NA on and off, and I never got past the white key ring. The white key ring that you get, the first one is surrender. I just couldn't get past it. I'd get the white keyring. Yeah, just for today, I'm going to stop. And then, I was in there again next week on my ass, because I'd been out and scored. And I just had a drawer full of them and I was getting really annoyed. Just, I want the red one or the black one or the gold one, But I hadn't understood surrender. I hadn't understood what that meant. And it's interesting because you can say it. You can say, yeah, I surrender and I'm going to stop. But I don't think we quite know what the word surrender means in terms of practical what it means, because it means letting go. And I think that in our minds, and I think it happens a lot in Christianity, and even if you're not an addict, we talk about, I surrender all. I don't think people really know what that means, like literally, if you do that. So with surrender, that was the first thing for me, is that I knew that I had to surrender, and it took some therapy. I had to have some therapy because I'm also bipolar, which doesn't help. And so I had, because of the bipolar thing, and they were going to give me some medication for it, which I refused. They then put me onto therapy, which I never thought I needed, because I was like, that's for people who are broken. It's so funny that, how your mind goes. I don't need therapy. That's for people who are, who need it, but I don't need it. Boy, did I need it. Wow. And it's great. Therapy was so good. I kind of broke on the 12th session, having turned 3 of my first counselors. I turned them, so that didn't work. So I had to get new ones. And then finally I got this woman called Caroline, and she wasn't having it. And she broke me on the 12th session. And I realized, she said to me, have you ever thought about the fact that you will never be able to use drugs or alcohol again? Like, it's not like an option that you could stop and then maybe in the future you could have it. Have you ever thought that there's a possibility that if you really want to stop, you can never have it again? And the penny just dropped. It just dropped, which was that, oh my goodness, that's the truth. The truth is I can never take alcohol again. I can never take drugs again, because if I do, I'll end up down a ditch somewhere with a needle in my arm. So that was the turning point for me, was understanding what surrender really meant. And then the pain of the loss, the grieving, the loss of this thing that was always there for me when I wanted to adjust my mood, when I wanted to bury things. And now I just had to sit with my bloody feelings, which was horrible. But I'm 7 years clean now, completely. And because I stopped the drugs, and then I was still doing some alcohol stuff. But if you take all of it together, all the drugs, 7 years completely clean. And I wake up naturally at 6 o'clock every morning. I train, I'm super healthy. My resting heart rate is between 40 and 50. And I'm very clear-headed. I go to bed early. Life is so much better. It's amazing without alcohol. And I've had to make new friends. I had to get rid of so many people who that's just what they like doing all the time. For me, I'm just not interested in it anymore. Yeah, I don't know if that helps. Oh, and I created this product called the Big Cold Turkey, which I could show you quickly. No, that one. Oh no, I can't actually. Sorry, it's not. We're still building our website because we in lockdown we decided to sort the website out and our brand. But I created a product called the Big Cold Turkey, which is a fun thing to do with young people, where if they're giving something up, they've got like a reward system, and it's been really successful, and it's been great with youth groups and stuff like that. And it's also a great conversation piece. It doesn't solve the problem, but it's like it's a conversation piece and a starting point, and then yeah.
Great. I think, sorry, Izzy Doran wanted to ask you a question about the Behold the Man project.
Yeah.
Or comment.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually so much of a question. I grew up in Leckhampton, so just down the road from you, and
oh yeah,
we've been in Falmouth for about 11 years now. And my parents have housed a number of graduates who've done little stints with you, so had a few connections to you in our time.
Oh, great.
Growing up, Alan was like such a prominent figure. Every weekend going into town, he was always outside Cavendish House. And
yeah,
it's not a question at all, but it just, Jonah introduced me to the project you did, and it was just had such a profound effect, this face that, and I remember being about 14 and seeing Alan, I didn't know his name, on the street, and just like, I found it so emotional seeing him because he looked so broken, but never did anything about it. Just saw him, felt sad, went to Topshop, stupid teenager. But it just had such a profound effect on me reading all about him through your project, and how he became so human suddenly, this figure who looked so down and out, just so downtrodden and so beaten on the street, then suddenly, like, even just learning his name, it just had such a big effect on me reading it. So I just feel like it's such a cool project, and thank you for doing it.
Thank you, Izzy.
Yeah, it's amazing. It makes me emotional because I just saw him in my life.
No, he's you know what's really interesting about Alan is that he was Mr. Grumpy, wasn't he? Like, the police didn't know what to do with him, and people found him very, very prickly. Every time I see him, he comes to me and we have a hug, but we have a really long one, because I don't believe in those like little hugs like that people do, but like we have a proper long hug, and he holds me and we hold each other and we say nice things to each other. So he's changed a lot. I mean, that's a big thing, and we were doing that even just after the project. Every time I saw him, he would, how he always sat down and you had to sort of bend down and talk. When I came along, he would get up and we'd have a hug and stuff and just talk. And so I think, because the other thing that's significant about that project, actually, not because I did it, but the significant part to it for me is what happened later. So the Salvation Army caught wind of it, and I ended up presenting that whole project at a homelessness conference for the Salvation Army, and they've taken the behold the man approach to empathy and to the understanding around how we respond. They've taken all of that and put that into their homelessness training programs, which I'm really proud of. I'm proud about that, because the thing is, when I went and did this thing with the Salvation Army, I kind of thought, but you guys are the experts. I mean, you're the guys who are working with homeless people all the time, but they took so much of that. Maybe because of the way that the project was done, it brought up unexpected responses that that we should be aware of. But thanks for that, Izzy.
No, thank you. It's interesting how just putting a name to someone on the street, it does, the empathy levels just sort of double, and especially in a place like Cheltenham, which can be so elitist as well. I think it's would have made a big effect. So
I would highly recommend, on our ASHA website, if you go to the foundation, if people haven't seen it, there's a short documentary on there, but it is really harrowing, and it really gives you an insight into him and the sadness around it, but also the sort of the hope. It's interesting. I think I watched that. I thought it was fab. So thank you very much. Cool.
Thank you. I think that's a great place for us to finish on. I'm sure if you have any burning questions for Marksteen, you could hang on a little bit, but I think we'll bring it to close there. Thank you so much, Marksteen.
You're very welcome.
Answering all our questions. So much inspiration. Can we try our Zoom round of applause? I don't know if it's going to be emojis or Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you all for coming. I don't know if Johnny has any other Sputnik-y notices.